the one thing that license wants to see is that you're doing something to prevent it from happening again. Those are simple things. Again, checklist. Make sure, that you physically have your eyes on these children, that you're checking their name off the list.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Childcare channel, a space designed to inform, inspire, and innovate in the childcare space. My name is Jane Diaz and I am your host. Our guest today is Misty Brown. Misty is an early education consultant from the state of Louisiana with more than 30 years of experience in the childcare space. Throughout her career, Misty has fulfilled multiple roles in ECE, including those of lead teacher, center director, and owner and operator of multiple childcare centers. Today, Misty focuses on consulting for childcare businesses, helping them thrive in areas such as staff professional development, licensing and crisis management, and optimizing budgeting and finances. I am thrilled to have Misty as our guest today and hope that if you operate a childcare center, you take something of value from our conversation that can help you elevate your childcare business. And now, without further ado, please help me in welcoming Misty Brown to the show. Misty, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. We've been talking for a while, and gosh, I'm really impressed with all of the experiences that you've shared with me. 30 years in childcare. How did that even come about? Were you like a toddler when you started doing childcare? What was going on there?
So I was 16 years old and my mom worked at the local hospital that opened the childcare center for the employees of the hospital. And I think she was really good friends with the CEO, who said, "Do you think Misty would want to work at the childcare center?" And she goes, "I doubt it." And then she came home and I said, "Yes." And so I started there when I was 16 years old at the local hospital, and I worked there for 6 years. And then I, got my CDA through the, National Council of, through the Washington, D.C. And so, it's just something I just didn't plan. I told my mom when I was 16 years old, I was going to go to work. And you know what? The Child Care Center actually opened on June 26th. And I was 16 years old.
That is amazing. I love it. You know how sometimes the universe just kind of like nudges you in a certain direction. And in your case, you started so young, 16, and you kept it up. Would you say this is like your life's calling, like what you're really passionate about?
I would say so, only because a lot of times we get in this field and there's so much that goes on and you try to do something else, but you just keep calling back and calling back. And I just really love it. It's a relationship business. You really get close to the children and the families. And I would say, yes, it is a calling, because you definitely don't make money.
I'm sure that a lot of our viewers can relate to this because, and I hear this time and time again, you don't really go into childcare for the money. You go into it for the heart. You go into it because generally you want to make a positive impact with the children. And really it's about shaping generations. So what would you say is your favorite area? 30 years. So what would you say is your favorite area, favorite part of the work that you do?
So I've always been a pre-K teacher. So I like to work with the 3s and 4s. But I've always wanted to be a mentor teacher. That was always my thing. Like when I was a Head Start teacher, they would say, what is your goal to be? And I would always say a mentor, which I never thought about it as being a consultant. And so because I always loved, just helping people. And it was just always, I wouldn't say easy, but I was a very consistent teacher. They would always give me the children with behaviors because I was very consistent. We went over the rules. The children knew what to expect. And so just the preschool. But then when I became a director, I was able to help. And I think that my staff, respected that, because I've had directors who basically is put in the position, but when we needed help, they really couldn't help us. And my staff knew that if I expected something, it's because I could do it too. And I could go into a classroom and I can model and show them how this works instead of just like, oh, well, you need to run your group.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. And what I'm hearing is you went from actually working directly with the children to then increasing that impact by actually training other staff with the things that you saw worked for the children. So in other words, through training the staff, you were able to impact even more children. So you'd say that is your biggest passion within the field of childcare. Is that correct?
Yes, I love to help teachers who are struggling. I think that, you know, you always say like your classroom is the third teacher, obviously, because the way that it's set up, it can make or break you. And sometimes, you know, the behaviors. And so just giving the teachers the tools to be successful. But not only that, you know, we talk about that, you know, we have when I do my trainings, I ask people who are, you know, auditory learners, and 20% of the population is. And I can tell you, I could be in a room with 50 teachers doing a professional development training, and I'll ask this question: who's an auditory learner? 2 people might raise their hand. Who's a visual learner? And maybe the whole crowd will raise their hand. And who's a kinesthetics? And who's both? Because I talk about this with children too. We sit there and we say, you know, follow the rules, but it goes in one ear and out the other. And I asked them, do you have visual prompts? Do you go over the rules every day? And so that is the one thing too that they don't realize. Another example I give is we go online at the grocery store and it doesn't move, say like in 30 seconds. We're like, oh my God, like, is this person new? I should have went to another line. But if our children don't sit in time, you know, in circle time and listen to us, we're, you know, a lot of us are easy to say, you want to go time out? You know, we expect things from our little children that we wouldn't do. We're not going to sit on a rug for 5 minutes and be bored. That's why we grab the inquiring minds want to know off the rack. That's why we look on our phone and see who posted something on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. And so we have to remember that these children are little us's, and we have to be able to relate to them, especially with technology now.
That's actually a great point. So I know that technology is a big deal, not just for the kids, but the staff themselves. And we'll get into the compliance side of things in a little bit. But when it comes to staff training and development, right, which is the big area we're talking about now, how did you go about tackling this whole technology usage with the kids and with the staff?
So we are in Louisiana, we have to, which is TS Gold, which is an assessment tool. And so we got tablets for our teachers to be able to use to upload pictures. We also are big Facebook marketers so the parents can see what the children are doing. It is very hard because we're all, you know, attached to our electronics. We did have someone come up with a cool idea, because the one thing in our license, and we're going to talk about compliance, is if you are caught with that phone out, it don't even have to be in your hand. That is against the supervision of children, and you can get a deficiency. And so we try to give them, you know, and plus they shouldn't be putting the children's pictures on their personal phones. You know, it should be all work related. That way, when you leave, it's all there.
Yeah.
And so we had someone come up with a cool idea, and it's like the shoe rack where you hang in your closet. You know, a lot of the teachers were not happy about this, but then it really did work. You would turn in your phone and you would put it in the shoe thing. So out of sight, out of mind. But if there was an emergency, you would just tell whoever needed to get in touch with you to call the office, and the office will come to your classroom and say, hey, you know, so-and-so, you know, and then when you had a break or something, you come and check it. Because I will say this, most places that if you get caught with your phone, that's an automatic termination. And
Wow.
unfortunately, we can't do that. You have to have ratio. Plus, no one's beating down the door for our, you know, our jobs with the, you know, the money and stuff like that. So it's not like we have this revolving door of people coming in. We much less have this revolving door of people coming out.
Right. Yeah, I know staffing, it's a big issue in the whole industry. I've had a few guests here who have had some very valuable things to share on that, actually. But I wanted to go back to the development of the staff itself, right? So this was a great tip that you just shared with us about the shoebox, putting the cell phone in there. I'm sure other people would think this is a great idea. What are maybe some other 2-3 tips that you can share with us about how you go about training your staff to manage children behaviors and to just have a better environment, right, in the classroom?
So one thing I do say is to make sure that you have, your rules established and that you go over them daily. And again, that's the one thing we constantly are saying, like, keep your hands and feet to yourself, sit on your bottom, stop running. But there's no visual. And so I know when I was in the classroom, I would say for the kids, we go over it every day. You keep your hands and feet to yourself. No, we walk, we don't run. And I kind of get them to, say, hey guys, what kind of feet do we have inside? We have walking feet. What kind of feet do we have outside? We have running feet. So that way you can get the kids to act it out with you in the classroom. I used to tell them, talk to your brain. And that your brain is in control of your body. So when my children would like hit a friend, I'd say, your brain's in control of that hand. You need to tell so we would go over the rules. And it's funny because my rules would be on the visual rules, pictures would be posted on my wall. And so I would say, you need to go study the rules, go tell your brain. And they would go, follow the rules, next to the poster on the wall. But you have to be consistent. Every morning we went over our rules, like, the expectations. So you got to keep them busy. If you're bored, they're bored. If you're having a lot of behaviors, you really need to see why, and just visual prompts. I mean, like I've had made visual prompts where there's a stop sign and you want the kids to stop, you hold up the stop sign. If you want them to use their walking feet, hold up the walking feet sign. If you want them to be quiet, you hold up the shh. So there's ways of doing it. So it gears to all the learning styles. Like I just talked about, like adults, that some of us is auditory, some of us are visual, some are hands-on. Well, we didn't start like that when we became adults. Mm-hmm. That's how, we are as children. So you really have to gear to the 3 learning styles in your classroom. You can't just be auditory. You can't just say, all right, everybody go sit in circle time. The biggest thing people are lacking is transitions. Instead of saying like, everybody have a seat, everybody have a seat on the floor. They're like, all right, everybody on the floor. I'm going to read this book. I mean, is that how like us, teachers, is that how you want to be spoken to? And so like in my trainings, that's what I kind of tell too, like they're little us's. You don't want to be drilled all day long. Neither do they.
Wow, this is so powerful. So I heard you say, as far as tips for the teachers, have the rules clearly established, give them visual prompts to reinforce these rules, and transitions. That's the first time I hear this. So transitions, have some type of activity, song, whatever it might be, that marks a transition and create a routine around it so that the moment they hear it, they're programmed to know exactly what to do. Right? Okay, yeah. That's awesome. I love it. Anything else as far as a tip that we must share before we move on to the next topic?
I would just say, just be consistent, use your visual prompts, have fun. And
that's a good one.
Yeah. And I do tell my teachers that look around your room. If you don't want to play with those toys on your shelf for 8 hours, why do they? So change up your materials.
I love it. Well, that's awesome. Okay, so I do want to move on to the compliance piece. You do a lot of work with the whole licensing and crisis management. And this is really an important topic we haven't yet discussed in the channel. And what I would like to hear from you, Misty, is, let's talk about those things that could really shut down a center. That maybe some are obvious, but maybe some are not so obvious. And I know you have some stories to share about this. So I'm gonna let you share those with us.
So I know I talked about the lawn care guy. This actually happened at my own center. It was on the weekend because, he came through and cut our grass, and the 1-year-olds go out on that playground. So, and And you all know that the 1-year-olds beat the teacher. So it's not like she goes out first and then they all come out following in a little line. They just ball out the door and they run straight. Well, the guy did not lock the gate, nor did he shut it. So when the kids like hit the gate, it flew open. And of course, the street was right there. Well, they did, thankfully, the teacher was fast enough to stop anyone from crossing out the gate line, but because it flew out and a car was on the street yelling at the teacher, of course, like, I can't believe you let all those kids out of that gate. Yeah. So I always say I rather us contact licensing instead of licensing contacts us. So we always say, we reported it. We self-reported it and said, this is what happened, that the lawn care guy, left our gate open, that he didn't put the lock. Well, they came and, they gave us a deficiency because it was basically our responsibility to make sure those gates are locked no matter what. And that in the morning when we come in, we, should have locked that. Well, I will say that center's been around since 1974. I've been there a long time, and that I know it only takes one time, but we've never had that happen. And so, yes, we were upset about it because, it was our fault, but it wasn't our fault. We trust too many people to, come in and close the gate. And so at this point, we're the one who got in trouble for, not, looking at the safety features which that is a huge compliance, that when you go into your classroom is that you look at your room, make sure there's no broken toys and that there's no, no chemicals left out, that there's no strings hanging. And so those are something that it doesn't matter, we had a center in Alabama. Most of the compliances are across the nation, for most of the childcare centers, just your daily check.
Actually, this is a really good point, and I want to just reiterate this example here. And if you're watching us and you have a center or you operate a center or you're somehow responsible for a childcare center or multiple, this is something really important. In this particular example of the person that left the gate open, the owners or the people running the center felt like this wasn't our fault, right? But at the end of the day, for licensing purposes, it is, because you are responsible for making sure that your children in your center are safe. So if somebody else, a provider or outside third-party provider or whatever, might have left the door open, it is your responsibility to do that daily checklist of everything, whether it's gate or, as Misty just mentioned, classroom or anything like that. And it could shut down your center, actually, if this is not given the proper attention. Okay, I just wanted to reiterate that. I feel like it's so important. Okay, Misty, what is another area in compliance that perhaps we often neglect?
Maintenance on your playground. We had a local center around our area who had a loose fence board. And staff members have said, to the director, hey, we have a loose staff board, or we always have loose staff. We always have a loose fence board. And I will say, out of sight, out of mind, they come back inside. The director gets busy doing something else. Nobody, takes care of it because, like, I give an example, if you're having an emergency and you say, hey, go call 911, everybody's thinking everybody's calling 911. That's why when you do the class, they will specifically say, like, Yang, go call 911, right? Because they know you're going to do it, not me. And so everybody just assumed this board. So one day, teacher not paying attention, child went through the fence board down the street on the highway, and the construction worker found the child, brought it, wondered, hey, where's this kid come from? Saw that there was a local childcare sign, walked the child back to the center. They opened the door like, oh my gosh, where'd you get this kid? And that shut them down. Like, there was no, and the sad thing is that one neglect of nailing a fence board, everybody lost their job. And so that's really sad because ultimately, again, the teacher should have been having a head count, right? Like, how many kids go out, how many kids come in. But ultimately it's the owner directors, but, responsibility to make sure that the compliance is, taken care of. How many people go around hitting their fence boards on their playground?
Mhm.
I don't, like if my teacher sees something loose, then I would suggest, like, if someone says, hey, there's a nail loose, grab a hammer right then and there. Because now that center that's been there a long time is no longer there. It's a center, but it's someone else's center.
Mhm. Mhm.
A good friend of mine is next to the bowling alley.
Mm.
And so she her teacher, again, it is so important. We're going to, stress, like, you need to know how many children you have in your classroom, and, do a head count. I don't care if you have like a checklist, but the child ran out of the building into the bowling alley and nobody knew it. And someone from the bowling alley brought the child back. And of course, these are self-reports. Like, you have to, now the construction worker called the cops because he's like, where'd these kids come from? So that was a whole nother ball game. The bowling alley, we're called Office of Family Support, OCS, and they do their own investigations. And so the child got brought back, no harm. And, of course, you tell the parents like, oh, he does that all the time. He runs off. But that doesn't matter because, like, she had to self-report to license and to the Department of Social Services. So I worked for the resource and referral agency at the time, got the phone call, like, what do I do? And I said, well, do you have any way, like, if someone leaves opens your door, does it go ding dong? And she's like, no. And I said, the one thing that license wants to see is that you're doing something to prevent it from happening again. So I said, you're going to have to do something about that. So she went and got all these like bells and whistles, and it sounded like Fort Knox in there, y'all. It was like, bing, bong, ding, dong, ding, dong. There was like no other kid was ever going to run off. So licensing came in and cleared her deficiency, but Department of Family Social Services did not. They found them guilty of child neglect and abuse. The
Wow.
teacher will never work in it. Well, and it's 10 years on your record. And so, and unfortunately, not only the teacher got hit, but the director did too. And she was the owner. And so she had to stay in her office and not have any contact with the children. Licensing came in every day to find out. She had to go to the grievance to have character witnesses saying that she was not, she does not have crimes again, with children. And that stays on your record for 10 years. And so that's how serious those things are.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, so you've shared quite a bit here with the stories. I mean, the child that runs off into a bowling alley, the one that runs off into the street with their construction worker found them. I mean, this is very serious stuff. And it sounds like it could have been prevented quite easily if there were just some simple structures in place, right? I would like to ask you, what are some, you kind of touched on this already, but I would like to ask you just as a summary, what are some like simple things that can be put in place in any childcare center to prevent incidents like this from happening?
Well, just a checklist, like like when you do like we talked about transitions, when you transition from one to the other, make sure you're looking at the children, everybody says, look at their eyeballs and stuff like that. And have a checklist, like little Susie's here, little Johnny, little Billy, little Ashley, Michael. And that way you have everybody. And you should always scan, the room. Again, that's where you don't have these phones in your hands. This is why it's so important, when the children run out your room or run out the fence. Like, I know playground for teachers is a socialization time because a lot of times, oh, like, what are you doing, for the weekend? And so they're not really paying attention. And it is so crucially important to pay attention to just do that scan, that count. And, there was like we had an attendance where you just have like a clipboard and you just wrote down, like when the parents brought them in, you had their names down. And when it was like breakfast time, you checked them. When they transitioned to circle time, you checked them. When you went from outside, inside, outside, you just always check the children. There was another instance where a parent went to go pick up their child, and the playground windows faced the front door, and you could see two kids like looking through the window, no teacher. And so of course the parents like, you have two kids out on the playground by yourself. And they're like, what? Of course, again, we go into this panic mode. This is not something that you ever want to hear when a parent comes in, right? That you got two kids left behind. So what happened a lot of times, and this is what happens several, is one teacher's leaving to go home and they combine the children. And another way to combine the children is to, put them either on the, the clipboard, and or the software can do that, like make sure that you transfer the kids to the the classroom. I know like OneCore has where you can kind of put the kids when you leave them on the other teacher, so that way when she comes in, and that's what another compliance is, that you're checking these kids in. So the teacher was like, that left and didn't tell the other teacher. She's like, okay, I'm going by, here's your kids. Like, she didn't communicate like who you have, who you don't have. And it was the case of, it's not my fault, I was leaving to go home, you had my kids. And the other teacher said, well, it's not my fault because I didn't know who I had. I didn't even know you left. All we know is there was two children left on the playground. And you know whose fault that becomes? The centers, who's got to now contact licensing because you left a child unattended that a parent found.
Yeah, that's actually a great point there. And, the bottom line is that whatever threatens the safety of the child is going to be a compliance issue, right? Like in this case, leaving children unattended. So as a business owner, as a childcare center owner or director or main operator person responsible for the center, the more structures, what I'm hearing is the most structures you can put in place to have your staff trained, to have them give them the tools so that they can easily do their jobs and prevent these things from happening, the better. You did mention OneCore Solution, and OneCore Solution is the sponsor of the Childcare channel. But whether you have a OneCore Solution, if you're listening to this and you have a childcare center, whether you have a OneCore Solution, childcare management software, or anything else like Procare, Brightwheel, any of the other solutions out there, there should be tools within those solutions that make your life and your staff's lives easier in order to track these things, right? So like Misty just mentioned, the whole classroom changes. Well, so your technology should support you in being able to easily track and give the access to your teachers as well to easily track when those classroom combinations happen, when you move kids from any classroom to another classroom. And then the accountability piece is going to be very clear, right? Because you're seeing it on the app, you're seeing it on your tablet, whatever the center uses for the teachers, right? So that's a very important piece. Wow. Well, you've shared a lot, Misty, that's really valuable. Is there anything else on the compliance side that we haven't covered that you feel is really important?
I would say as a director, I used to pretend I would go into the classroom as licensing with a little checklist. I would rather me find stuff than licensing, of course. And I've always told the teachers, like, if you get caught, I get efficiency for something in your classroom, then you'll get a reprimand. I know it sounds harsh, but as directors, we work way too hard to try to stay in compliance. For a teacher to leave out, say, just simple whiteout. Or, just something, their purse, and then, our desitin and that's not locked up. So I used to go in and I would say, hey, I'm Misty Brown with license, and what's your name and how many kids you have? And it would just kind of like floor me when my teachers were like, well, my name is so-and-so, and let me see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you should not be counting. You should be saying, I have up to 11 kids. Like, because what happens if you have a fire drill? I mean, we've had parents come to our center because their child was left in the bathroom while everybody was doing a fire drill. Those are simple things. Again, checklist. Make sure, that you physically have your eyes on these children, that you're checking their name off the list. It could be, software. It could be on a piece of paper, a clipboard. that's AM and PM, and it's just that visual, list. And those stories, like I said about the fence, the yard guy or the fence, those are very critical shutdown pieces. And licensing used to just give you deficiencies, but now those deficiencies are being attached to fines up to $3,000. And I will say for teachers, you guys work way too hard. And we all need materials and learning center stuff, that instead of paying $3,000 for licensing because of neglect of us just watching or putting stuff away, that we could put those $3,000 into our classroom materials for the children's education.
Actually, this brings up a good point, because I know you also specialize in the areas of budgeting and financing for childcare centers. So, it's a known thing that childcare businesses is not really a very profitable business model, right? Profit margins are not the best compared to other businesses, of course. Just really quick, would you have any tips to share when it comes to budgeting and finances for childcare businesses to be able to maximize the resources that they do have?
I will say, when I was a director, my owner took care of all that. And then someone had showed me over the years, which I'm very thankful for, the budgeting piece, because that nationwide 5 childcare centers closed down daily for mismanagement. We think with our hearts, we don't think with our heads. Again, it's a relationship business. A lot of people do not understand, you have a monthly budget, and in that budget, what's the percent that you put, for food, maintenance and repairs and materials, and your labor is a huge cost. And so, this person, demonstrate, like, I'm a visual learner, so 100 Skittles, right? And so if you think about what is my labor, go look on your P&L and see what your labor is. And so if your labor's sitting there at 75% to 80, you're pulling out 80 Skittles. Now you got 20 Skittles left. You have to think what's consistent on your building. What do you have to pay no matter what if you get no tuition coming in? You have to pay your mortgage, your lights, right? You have to pay your insurance, Wi-Fi, trash. Those things are consistent. Like they don't really, go up and down, but your labor piece. And that's why it's very important. Like when, we do, ratios. And so some centers will have 2 teachers to a classroom and have 8 children in there. Yeah, that's a great 4-to-1 ratio, but you're not going to make it, I mean, seriously. And so we come in and we try to help them be successful, because there's a percentage that you use for your food. There's a percentage, and there's for the maintenance and repairs and stuff like that. And, and each center's different with, and there's a number that you like to target, because we do a model that there's 70 plus children in a school, you start making money. And so like when, people start asking us, like, how big should the center be? Well, enough to hold at least 70 to 75 children is your mark, because it's very hard to do a 25 to 30, and infants is like, for our area, you have to pay, a lot of places don't do it because the parents have to pay so much money in order, for the care. And so a lot of people will start at 18 months and skip the whole infant, but it's a feeder, because you do not make any money really until the 2-year-old classroom.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And Misty, we're nearing the end of our interview here. Well, I want to ask you one last big thing here, and that is, obviously, you're in the state of Louisiana. You've been consulting for years, well over 30. You have experience in just about every area. But let's say there's a childcare business in any of the states that watches us, and they're really looking to get a consultant to come in and really help them out with some of the stuff we've talked about. What should they look for in a consultant before they decide to hire them?
Just look at their strong points. Like, I know I have worked in every area. My strong point has always been classroom arrangement, behavior modification, just because I've always been in the classroom, and I understand the hardships of teachers sometimes not. And a lot of times my saying is, when you know better, you do better. And when you just don't know, so that is very hard when, it's not one person that makes a difference. It does take a whole village. We always said, when our, teachers are taking care of the children, they're taking care of us and we take care of them. And a director just can't bark out. Like I was a very delegated, like I would get my teachers' input on scheduling. And if someone called in, I didn't know how to give breaks. I wasn't, like I would ask a teacher, because of course they're going to just tear it up like Swiss cheese, oh, that's not going to work. And I was like, okay, well, you make a schedule. You tell me, so just make sure that they know exactly, what's their background. I've gone into trainings, and just because you have professional development or business education doesn't mean that you can truly help. I will say this an example. There is a person in the field who's a nurse, and they have to give like administration, medicine, and they have to show the cleaning. And they want, and we always joke about this. So some cleanings on the back, that will kill like everything. You spray it on the table. And if you read the directions, it'll say leave on the table for 10 minutes. And they highly recommend. And I said, oh yeah, because the toddlers and the 2-year-olds or any kid's going to say, okay, I'll wait 10 minutes for my snack while this chemical works, right? That's not their world. That's our world, because they just don't live in it. But because I eat, breathe, and live childcare, I know exactly, like I can't make these stories up. Like I will say that I have been there, and there's still surprises, I'm sure, but I have a lot more stories where that comes from. But just get someone who actually has been in your shoes. Example, like I would say a trainer. Let's just say a trainer who is teaching people how to lose weight, but she's always been skinny. How's she going to teach me to lose weight if she's always been skinny? Right? Mm-hmm. So how does people who, yes, everybody, loves children, or you get the call and says, I'm looking for a job. Would you have any experience? Yeah, I'm a mother of 3. We all know being a mother of 3 and take care of 3 and 4-year-olds are completely different.
Right. Okay, well, great. Those are some great tips. So if you're looking for a childcare consultant, just to sum up what Misty has just shared here, obviously you're welcome to reach Misty, and we'll leave her information here in a moment. But if you are vetting someone, whoever it might be, maybe it's someone even specialized in your particular field of care and state and all of that, just be very clear about what's most important to you and what you're trying to accomplish, and really look for what the results are that person has gotten in those particular areas, especially their specialty. So Misty, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
So I'm in Slidell, Louisiana, which is 30 minutes from New Orleans. Woohoo! And I am a consultant, and my page, I have a Facebook, it's ML Brown LLC. My email is Misty, Misty, Brown, BROWN 44@yahoo.com. I love to help. That is just my passion, is to help teachers. And I do, professional development on behavior modification, classroom arrangement. Transitions are fun. Again, got to get back to those transitions.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Misty. And just to close off the show, we like to do something here on the channel that's called 3 in a Beat, where we ask our guests 3 questions that are simple to answer in 1 word or 1 sentence at the max. And they're meant to be fun, and we just want to hear your candid answers. Are you ready to play 3 in a Beat?
Oh, sure.
All right, so we're going to play 3 in a Beat. Misty, the first question for you is, if you could be any type of object, what would you be?
I guess a ball. Just throw me around.
I love it. All right, next question. What's the food that you usually refuse to share?
My pistachio nuts.
Okay, nice. No, those are great. All right, and then question number 3, a little bit more serious. What is the number 1 skill that you believe children must learn in this day and age?
So the is just basically before you can teach your child just the nurturing, for them to feel safe in their environment.
Well, Misty, I have really enjoyed having you here on the Childcare channel. Definitely look forward to learning more from you. Everybody, if you've made it this far in the channel, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for paying attention to everything that we've been talking about. If you have any questions, if you have anything to share, please do make a comment in the video here or reach out to us any which way you prefer. And as always, if you really like the channel and the content that we share, please like and subscribe, as it would help us grow and spread it to more people who need to hear it. Misty, any last words before we check out?
No, just have fun. Just enjoy your children and have fun, because it's all about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Misty. Everybody, thank you so much. See you next time.